Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us here and also online. I'm cognizant that there are some. And we really wanted to have a conversation around textiles. Just a quick note, this session is being recorded and live cast currently and will be available online. So please do share it widely once you see it. So the question is, why SMEs? Why water? Why textiles? Particularly with those viewing online, that issue is more an issue of economics. Asia is one of the largest textile producers, and one of the silent issues that has happened and affected a lot of industries is around water pollution, water contamination. Now, far be it from me to say too much about it at this stage. I would like to play a short video clip. Let me just see if it's ready. Yes, I think it's ready. A short video clip to kind of give a caveat of what this issue is and how it's affecting not just human rights, but also more critically, environmental rights and our well-being.
We do really recognize the importance of the global trade in textile and garments because this has brought tremendous benefits to emerging economies and also creating opportunities for decent work. But these benefits are sometimes overshadowed by the costs that these industries impose on human rights and also the environment.
There are so many countries here involved, and sometimes we focus too much on our own localities. So seeing some numbers regionally.
So microplastics, this one, were found in the Chitaram River, and at the same time, our utilities are unable to treat these microplastics. Mercury and persistent organic pollutants were found in the fish and rice products, affecting the right to food and the right to livelihood. Chromium-6, which are known to increase cancer risk, cause tumor and delay skeletal development, were found in wells near Chitaram River.
What's the biggest challenge in terms of address the access to clean water in the region from your perspective?
I think the population growth and urbanization means that the goalpost changes very fast. So we need to keep up with that pace of development. For me, that's one of the key challenge, and therefore we need to deploy resources at a pace that can keep up.
The most important water issue within the Asia region is really water degradation, and that's not only water pollution, which is a huge part of that, but it's also degradation of the ecosystems upon which water depends. And so it's taking that, the degradation comes from overuse, from deforestation, from land degradation, from excessive development, from mismanagement of water resources. And then on top of that, you add pollution to that. And it's really incredibly difficult, and it's got to change. We can't keep going that way.
Years at the UN, and I keep forgetting that button. So that is, in a nutshell, why textiles, why water, why this is an important discussion. Now, far be it from me, I'm just going to say the same message to everybody. This is a trusting room. So anybody who's coming in, please come to the front so that we don't have to rely too much on the mics. I would like to introduce the first round of conversation. And with that, introduce my co-moderator, Ms. Sagita Adesiwi, who is the Business and Human Rights specialist in Indonesia, and also the co-author of Human Rights Due Diligence and Clean Water. Over to you, Sagita.
Thank you, Belinda. Good afternoon, everyone. Happy to see some familiar faces here. I hope you've been enjoying the 2 days workshop for now. In the cognizance of time, I would like to just start it with the first round of our discussion. As we saw in the video that today we are going to address the water issues within the textile industry. Particularly, we're going to see the critical challenges and opportunities that suppliers face in managing water usage and pollution within the textile production process. As we know that the textile industry is notorious for its water-intensive operations. And today we will explore how suppliers can adopt innovative solutions to mitigate their environmental impact. So to kick off our discussion, I would like to turn into our first speaker, Nahidun Nabi, who will be joining us from online, the Senior Manager of Ethical Traders at Ecotex. Nahid, are you with us?
Yeah, just hi. Good
Hi.
afternoon.
Good afternoon, Nahid. Thank you for joining us from far. So, Nahid, the production of textile, as mentioned, is a water-intensive process, both in terms of water consumption, but also on water pollution. Our research on access to clean water and the business and human rights agenda noted that approximately 844 million people worldwide live without access to clean water, and 110 millions alone in Southeast Asia. And so many people don't have access to clean water. So, as we know, right to water impacts the fulfillment of the other rights, including right to live, right to food, and right to employment. So, polluted water equal to violated rights. So, Nahid, could you please share with us your insights how suppliers in the textile industry can address water pollution and mitigate its impact? Over to you, Nahid.
Yeah, actually, textile production is a water-intensive process. No, in Ecotex, we are using 4 million liters of water every day. Its mean is that it's a 1 liter of a bottle. We are using 4 million of bottles water in every day. So previously, what we are doing that we are using the ETP for recycling the wastewater, and we are discharging the water in the nearest canal. But recently, we have our management has established a ZLD project. ZLD is a zero liquid discharge project. Uh, After the ETP, this water come to this ZLD project, and through certain process, this become the fresh water. And after becoming the fresh water, we are again reusing this in our production. So this how we have we are not extracting 4 million liter of water every day. Now this water is we are recycling and using again and again in our process. So this is significantly reduce our dependence on the groundwater. And Ecotex remain content to align with the global environmental best practice and ensuring the responsible textile manufacturing.
Thank you so much, Nahid. So this is a striking number. The industry, or I mean, your operation use 4 million of liter water each day, right? Every day.
Yeah.
And we have heard that many people even doesn't have access to one bottle. So this is a very intensive industry in using water. So, but yeah, like as you said, some industry or some companies maybe or some SMEs have access to technology or innovation to reuse or recycle the water, to extract the water. But smaller textile suppliers or factories, they do not have access to the latest technology. And in this case, what kind of support would you recommend for this kind of factories who are under pressure from brands, from investor, maybe, or even from the government regulation to limit impacts of water contamination, and they don't have access to this technology? What would you recommend? What they need to do? Over to you.
Yeah, actually the ETP and the ZLD is not only expensive for the setting up, but also it's very expensive for operating cost. So the factory who are very small or the factories who are located in same area in very nearby, they can establish a common ETP or common ZLD. Like in Bangladesh, there are export processing zone and the tannery industry. They have the common. I mean, they have the shared ETP and shared. They have the shared ETP. So it's a minimize their not only the setup cost but also the operating cost. But in Bangladesh, they can also access the government green finance scheme. Bangladesh government is allowing very low interest rate for those who are establishing this sort of those who are taking initiative to establish this sort of sustainable issues. And not only that, brand also can play a very vital role. They can commit to the secured long-term orders with the factories so that factory management come in a confidence and they can establish this ETP or ZLD project.
Thank you, Nahid, for the insight. So I noted that suppliers or factories can access government financial scheme to support their sustainability efforts and also to reach out to big brands to support them. But for some factories or some supplier who may not join some sustainability effort before, what is the really feasible steps or action they could do when they don't even know this kind of support exists, for example? What is your experience in this? Over to you.
Actually, it is very tough for them, no, because it's very cost effective. If those sort of small factories, maybe 2, 3, or 4 factories located in very nearby, they may make a shared ETP or they can do anything that is shared.
So networking with the other supplier is critical to access this kind of support from the government and also from the brands. Okay, Nahid, we may have some question for you from the floor, but for now, I would like to turn into our second speakers, Arvindan Singh, who is the head of power plant and utilities Thai acrylic fiber. So Arvindan, can you share with us? Do you think integrating human rights and environmental standards, for example, such as the safer chemical use and water recycling, really could enhance market access and industry resilience? Over to you.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Sagita, for asking these questions. And I would thanks my friend Nahid, and he has said many things. So before I start answering your questions, and I will add something, because in our industry, in my company, where I'm working right now, every day we are using 16 to 18,000 cubic meter of water per day. And yes, it is very water intensive units, all the textile units across the world is facing every day the problem is maintaining the water qualities and meeting the local or country's standards. So in our case, we are having a very robust kind of ETP systems where equalization tanks are there. So different kind of streams we are taking into one equalization tanks. It is a pond. And from there, we are monitoring its pH, temperatures, everything. Then the next process flow, it goes to the aeration ponds. From there, the self, means we are having agitators, what you call it, where we, what is this? Aerators. Aerators are there in all the ponds where we maintain the required kind of dissolved oxygens. And we are not using any chemical in that ETP. We are using a natural degradation system, and where we are using cow dung and molasses. Sometimes to meet the nutrients, we are using urea and some things. So we are maintaining the water quality. From there it goes to. So, and most importantly, our entire process, discharge water quality is exposed to the government of Thailand. They can monitor online what we are discharging from our factory to the river. They can monitor like COD, BOD, and what is the pH, what is the TDS, those kind of things they can monitor online. And whenever anybody wants, they can also go and check what kind of water we are discharging to the river. Yes, I will add one more thing here, that treatment of water, wastewater is very, very expensive. In our case, we are 3.5 baht per cubic meter is a treatment cost right now. And out of that, almost 2.95 baht per cubic meter is the power cost. So it is having a lot of impact on our process entire and the product cost, everything. Okay. Right now, the technologies are changing, and it is not affordable for many of the companies, even they are making profit, then also it is having a lot of impact. So treatment cost, it's every day it is going, increasing. Okay. So next question, what you asked, Sagita? Tell me.
Yeah, I mean, this is what we heard as well from the suppliers that we met for our study, that the treatment cost is very expensive. Even for the medium up companies, that not many of them has a wastewater management plan, because it's very costly to build one, even for big brands. And even though, for example, in Indonesia, the government already provided a communal wastewater management system, it's still very costly, and not many companies even use it, because it's not just providing the technology. They need to provide also training for the operators and so on, right? So we can hear the same challenges here from you as well. The technology is keep changing. It's very very expensive. It's challenging for the supplier, for the SMEs. So my question was whether, with these challenges, is it worth it for suppliers to be more sustainable in their practices? Because the discussion is it could enhance the supplier competitiveness in the market. While in the other hand, you have some challenges of the cost, the technology, the resources, the human capital, but you want to access the market. So what is your insight on this?
Yeah, well, Sagita, see, just as I told, see, ultimately the humanity is at task, because we have to save the human life. Okay, cost comes secondary, but yes, we are in business, so cost also, very, very important. But the human life is, utmost important than anything else. So my suggestion would be, as Nahid said, that we can share the ETP loads. But my experience is that if the industries are having similar kind of product, then only it is advisable to share, because these bacteria which are getting developed to eat the COD, they are such sensitive. Small variations in parameters like pH or temperatures, they are getting died. Then again, you have to restore their life, a lot of time, and then once again the nutrients and many things are. Am I right, Nahid? So similar kind of product and their ETP discharge can be shared. But if it's different, I think it is difficult to get treated.
So Nahid, you can jump in.
No, yeah, definitely. But whether our factory is located, actually all garments factory located in the same area, about 100,000 directly employee workers live in that area. So it is quite easy for us to making this kind of share project, because there is no steel, cement, or other type of industries located in that area. So this is one of the advantage for us.
Thank you, Nahid and Arfin. So do you think that being competitive in the market is important for SMEs, or this is like the number, I don't know, maybe the second option or even 10 in your agenda? Over to Nahid and Arfin, both of you.
Yeah, being competitive is always beneficial. So we have to be, and adopting new technologies, yes, always keeps us competitive.
Even though it's very costly.
Uh, See, everything is having its own cost, but I told nothing is above humanity and human life.
Nahid, do you agree?
Yeah, obviously agree, but there is a cost for the sustainability. No, whenever we are doing the marketing, just we are showing that we have 1.3 megawatt solar panel, we have ZLD project, we have this. Buyer are getting impressed, but whenever it's come for the costing, our costing is, I mean, slightly higher than others because they are not doing that of things. So in that case, just we are getting in, in a trouble for competing with our other competence. So I think it's a dilemma also.
Okay. Okay, I still have some question, but I don't want to take all the questions in this round. So I will thank you to Nahid and Arfin. Please stay with us. And I offer to you, Belinda.
Thanks. Thank you very much.
Thank you all. That was interesting. I will not pretend I understood everything, especially the technicalities between Nahid and Arvind. What I do want to ask though is what's ATP? Effluent treatment plant. ET, thank you. And I think that's always good. You know, one of the things that we often say about water, jokingly, when we talk about water governance and water management, is water belongs to everybody. We have a finite amount. So all the water that we need is already in our ecosystem. It's about how we use it. It's about how we manage the resources that we have. And unfortunately, sometimes you do get into a situation where, in spite of our best efforts, you know, we cannot, it's difficult. As you mentioned, it's very technical. There's the ETP bits, there's the management of the different bacteria and toxins and the different chambers, etc. But it's always quite interesting to hear that conversation between Nahid, you work with the factory Ecotex, and of course, Avind, you work with Thai big company Aditya Birla. There we go, Thai acrylic fiber. Now I want to turn over a little bit to Musumi, who works with Fairware and actually works with both stakeholders. So on this second round of the discussion, I'd like to introduce Musumi, who is the country, Musumi Sarangi, who is the country manager for India in Fairware, Nepal Kunabs, founder and CEO of Non, and Dr. Piriya, who is a water resource management specialist. Help us better understand this landscape. So Musumi, you work with brands, very large brands, and with Fairware. You also work with factories. What are you seeing? What is the responsibility of brands in helping factories along this very technical journey and costly journey, as Avind pointed out?
Thank you, Belinda. I'll, at the outset, put a disclaimer. I'm not a water expert, so the technicalities, like I will also not pretend to understand all of it. But I will, try to respond in the landscape of human rights due diligence and environment, because both are very interconnected. A few pointers before I respond to you, Belinda, is, you know, in our efforts to transition into a low carbon economy, if we do not have the eye for human rights, we are losing a battle. It is not a one-way traffic, so there is a need for integration of both human rights and environment due diligence in our purchasing and business practices. That's one. Second, I'll draw a bit from our morning plenary today on engagement. We have to address power in the room. The power between brands and suppliers, the power between suppliers and workers. It's not a uniform linear landscape we are talking about. So for engagement, we have to address the elephant in the room. And when we talk about engagement, we have to look at the power imbalance and how we have the right stakeholders in the table, speaking with equal legitimacy and equitability of voice, not just the seat at the table. Third, looking at the UNGP Principle 1, duty of the government. We speak a lot about duty of what brands need to do, what suppliers need to do, their roles. But if the duty of the government, which is the right to protect, does not create a baseline which is above the bare minimum, brands and suppliers will continue to escape the discussion because you are setting benchmarks which are so low that I don't need to fight. I mean, it's already low. If minimum wages are still of a medieval age, what do workers fight for? Living wage is a very far off conversation in that sense. And the fourth that I want to highlight is the gendered impact of our business practices. I was looking at the ILO report. 60 million women are employed in the textile sector. And this is counted. What about the millions of countless home workers, workers in subcontracting firms that do not receive the recognition of being a worker even, and the impacts of climate and water degradation on their lives. Putting these 4 pointers, coming to what brands can do, the first 2 points are very micro, looking at your internal business practices. What you as your business can do is look at what are the harms that you are causing because of your practices. A lot of times we look at the external ecosystem, which is larger, many more stakeholders at play, and then we ask this question to ourselves, where should I start? Start with your own business practices. That is the least we can do as responsible business operators. That's one. Second, look at human rights or environmental rights not in the landscape or in the department of CSR, right? It's for long been in that department. It needs to be cross-cutting. The production manager needs to be equally aware of what needs to be done as the CSR manager, because it's not CSR, it's not philanthropy. It's your responsibility and should be intertwined with all the target settings of business. So unless you make it intertwined, like you have targets, if you want to achieve $100 million, then you get this incentive. You also have to put a target that human rights violation should not happen in producing this product, right? And that makes it more incentivized, that makes it a little more competitive, also for the internal business. Otherwise, it's a fight between your CSR department and your production manager and your design manager. Because for long, I mean, I've been working with suppliers now 8 years, and they tell me the CSR team comes and says, do this training, put up grievance mechanism. And when the production manager speaks to us, he says, nothing doing. You have only 30 days to produce this garment, and this is the price. And that price is not even a fair price with a decent profit margin. And to expect, and I'm not painting suppliers white sheep here, to expect suppliers from their lower margins to include the cost for human rights is a false idea, is a utopian idea. It would not happen in the real world. Brands, big businesses, where the money is, the accountability also should lie there. We have within Fairwear a very interesting visual representations of where, there's two cylindrical diagrams, one which is about 95% money and 5% accountability, and the other 5% money and 95% accountability. This is supplier, this is brand. So if this continues to remain the picture, things won't change. Yeah. And the third that I want to bring in is lobby with the government. And lobby not just by the civil society actors or organizations like the UN, by businesses. Lobby that we will continue to engage, and it is not the race to the bottom to the lowest price. No, the race is to look at risks and how do we address risk collectively. Because even governments want their economy to survive, right? Textiles for many economies is the driver. Now, they wouldn't want that this economy driver goes to a different country because of lower prices. And there will always be somebody who would produce lower than what you offer. So can we, as brands and businesses, also lobby with the government of continuing businesses and acknowledging that human rights risk violations are there, but we will collectively address it. And the last that I want to put onto the table is around access to remedy when it comes to any kind of violations, whether environment or human. How do we create channels which are functioning, not numbers on the board on a factory wall, right? Which nobody knows who will pick up, nobody knows what it is even for, but numbers or mechanisms which are functioning, numbers which actually look at remediation from a worker's lens, right? So this is a snapshot here. I want to present, Belinda, largely from a human rights lens. But like I said, these are not separate topics. Both human rights, water, environment are intertwined, and we need to look at it from the same lens rather than as separate, isolated, trajectories that needs its own intervention.
Exactly. And as Mr. Vinder mentioned, at the end of the day, yes, there is that cost element, but it's water, it's life. We all need it, right? So thank you so much for the, I want to, I'm feeling a bit cheeky, and I'll ask maybe a follow-up question on, have you seen any case studies that you can point to of brands? It might be maybe in the human rights field, but something that we can learn from of how they have provided that support to their suppliers to address some of the, whether it's human rights or clean water risks.
I'll share an example around wages with a couple of Fairway member brands are doing. So each country has this minimum wage, right? And the discourse around living wage is continuing now for decades. What should be the living wage? What are parameters to calculate a living wage? Who determines that living wage? A lot of conversations. Unfortunately, workers are not receiving any of these benefits of these conversations because it's still a conversation on how to calculate that number. It's important, I'm not undermining that, but is the worker benefiting from it is my question. Coming to the example, within Fairware, what we've tried to also advocate with our member brands, Fairware has around 140 small, medium-sized European brands as our members, that can we make a start, right? Because we know textiles is fragmented, we know textiles, one brand purchases from multiple factories located in multiple geographies, countries, it's not uniform. Can we make a start? So say, for example, a living wage in a city in India is hypothetically 10,000 baht, right? If that's the living wage, what is your contribution to that 10,000 baht? If you are taking 10% of the factory produce, you're doing 2 seasons, what is your percentage of contribution to the living wage? Let's start with that, right? And then probably build an ecosystem with the other brands to collaborate and see if we can make progress on attaining better, fair wages for workers. So some of our brands have been able to do that, where they are looking at what is their contribution to the figure and doing it, I wouldn't say in the most appropriate manner, because wages has further subdivisions in terms of social benefits that workers need to be provided, but they do it in terms of bonuses, sometimes once every 2 months, sometimes once every 4 months, 6 months, depending on the leverage. So there is a possibility to make progress. Like I said, start internally, start first. So that's something that we've been doing with some of our member brands. Not everybody is jumped to the bandwagon yet, which we hope, but some of our brands are doing that. But what is fundamental here is suppliers sometimes not agreeing to taking that bonus or the additional payment for their workers. Suppliers only agree when brands have long-term commitments with them. They have been engaging with those factories for a couple of years. Because if tomorrow, say, a brand starts this new fancy project, does it for a year and goes back, I mean, the workers are going to continue to ask that from suppliers. Suppliers would not be able to give it. So they also are very, mindful of that ecosystem, that only when brands who procure from them, whatever the leverage might be, if there is a continued business, if there's a long-term business and there's a surety of business, only then even suppliers agree. So this is additional money. Even then suppliers won't agree, and I understand that pain. Coming from a production country, I understand their problems there. So it's fundamental, again, like I said, long-term relationships with your suppliers to work on human rights and environment violations, because you need transparency for it. You would need, when we say there's lack of transparency, how can I be transparent if I know the moment I open up to my violations or to my mistakes as an individual, I would be reprimanded, right? If I look at it a very micro, my own self, if I know I'm going to get scolded for something I do, I'll try to hide it. I'm human, right? But if I know you would help me address it, I would be more open to share with you what my shortcomings are, what my fallacies are. So that's the same in a very easy way that I'm trying to say. It's not that easy. That's the relationship between a brand and supplier. Unless there's trust, transparency, and the commitment to continue to engage even if there are fault lines, because trust me, supply chains in textiles have risks everywhere, so it's not that they move from here and they go to a much better supply chain. There might be some 5-10% differences, some higher on the learning curve, but it's more or less the same because it's a micro small industry in most cases, employing one of the most vulnerable populations in the world, and that is why you produce here. You don't produce in Europe, right? There's a reason why you produce here. So I'm not getting into that debate here, but yeah, putting it on the table.
No, and it's a debate that I think is interesting, particularly because now that we're on this topic of salient risks, right? You're right. Textiles is an industry that has risks everywhere, right? And I'm also cognizant that some of those risks are invisible to the naked eye. So there are, there's chemical runoff, there's water waste management, etc. That is the key thing. And I think we heard of Avinda and Nahid just talking about how there are improvements in technology. But I also think it's important for us to fully realize what are some of those challenges in managing those risks, right? Once the CH4, or my chemistry is terrible. Yes, yeah, that's the only one I could think of. Once there is chemical runoff, it's difficult for us to say that piece of chemical runoff we can attribute to such and such, or that is attributed to this brand or that factory. So maybe I'll just quickly also turn over to Dr. Perea, who help us maybe better understand when it comes to, water resource management. How do we better manage those risks? How do we better manage this issue of water pollution, particularly in the textile industry? And also maybe just drawing from Nahid's example, a lot of factories are in the same area. So being able to say where the chemical runoff came from is a very tricky item. But in your experience, what have you seen? What are some of those water governance measures that can help us better understand and manage the issue?
Thank you, Belinda. And I think, let me start off with this. In 2018, there was water pollution from textile industry from Kandal province in Cambodia, and it flowed down to Angong province in Vietnam. You see that we learned that there are numbers of chemical substance in the production and process and even the supply chain, right? I think it's more than 20,000, and also doesn't include microplastic. And once that substance get into the water, it doesn't know where the boundary is. It just go as a flow. So I think that's the first thing is we really need to know when it happened and how it happened. So in order to deal with such an incident and also to prevent it happen in textile industry, I think first thing what we really need to pay attention is the data and information about the water treatment and that kind of incident. So without data that we know on the polluted water that created by this industry, it's very difficult for us to manage it. With this, I would say the monitoring network and the data collection is the bottom line of managing this water resource and polluted water. And when we talk about this, it could be only one source, and then you can manage within your area. Or in some cases, it go through a different river basin or in even different country, like the case that I raised. In this area, I was working with the Mekong River Commission, and that's such a international governance system. I think that is a need for such transboundary management for water pollution. So this kind of mechanism will help the member countries, or even it's not different international river basin or within the basin. If we have that such a governance mechanism, that would help us in order to set up the rules and regulation, and also help to manage and monitor. For 1995 Mekong Agreement, it's right clearly on Article 7 that country member need to be careful on not produce a harmful effect for other member countries. And if it happened, you have to inform other people. And more interesting, in Article 8, it says if it happened, and you have to pay. So that's the principle of polluter paid on such mechanism for transboundary contamination or polluted water. And besides the data information, the coordination mechanism, and I think that communication, exactly as Musumi said, when it happened, how you can communicate this incident between, let's say, the upstream and downstream, or the polluter release and then the acceptance. That's a basic human rights that we have, right? When such polluted water get into the system, it's not only for polluted and then affect the human body, it's also ecosystem. And it's not only this one such a textile industrial, but also its impact from other industry, tourism, fisheries, agriculture. It doesn't have to say, when we talk about supply chain for textile, in tier 1 is more than 60% as a source of release of polluted water, right? And in that supply chain, when the process of produce the raw materials, how many pesticides we use, how many of them release into the water, right? So without the close monitor in every process, if we can, before we go into the treatment, right? The monitoring, process, and then treatment mechanism. And at the end, I think it's also capacity and financial resource that we I think that's really need in different form of support. International organizations have many studies and then program. WWF is one that did projects in several countries, Bangladesh, India, Indonesia, and Vietnam also, for water stewardships in the textile industry. And it released a study in several reports saying several barriers existing, including water governance in practice, policy, and also the capacity and finance. So I think in these issues that I just addressed in this round, we cannot manage it separately. It's all interlinked, as we just discussed. And I think what I always said is the problem in the world today is not causing by one cause. So it's impossible that you use a single solution to solve it. It needs integrated solution, and that's the classic difficult words to work with. So I stop here for the first round. Thanks.
Thank you. And I was just keeping a ledger here of, and sorry, Naps, I was keeping a ledger of the costs that have been mentioned. So in the first round of discussions, we've heard there's a cost to the technology pieces. There are, supplier demands. There's legislative pieces. There's the human rights and forced labor part that you have to manage. You also have to manage the water. You don't want it to get to waste, so you have to manage the water management. But I think even beyond that, we also recognize how all of this is having a broader impact on humanity, etc., etc. Now, as an SME operating in Asia, I mean, I was trying to put a dollar figure on all of this, and it's a lot. It's a lot of money. It's a big cost. But I do know that NAPS, you are part of a movement of companies that are now starting to think more broadly about how do we create more sustainable business models. So maybe just want to hear about kind of this cost of sustainability question. And maybe just tell us a little bit about your journey and some of your reflections.
Right, thank you, Belinda. So, good afternoon. So, what are my reflections? So, these are all externalities which need to be covered by someone, and I guess that led me to creating Non, our startup. So, as a disclaimer, I'm not actually from the textile industry myself, not directly, but I'm from the mattress industry, so it's kind of related. So, my family, we've been in the mattress industry for the past 95 years, or nearly 100 now, and I spent 10 years working with them before starting one startup. So the startup is called Non. We're part of the circular economy movement. So what we do as a business is we have implemented a product as a service business model that combines that is integrated with end of life recycling. So we've been focusing on high value, long life products, starting, as you may have guessed, from mattresses. So with our model, customers and businesses, instead of having to invest big money in mattresses, they can just subscribe and pay monthly to use mattresses. So these are brand new mattresses, and the subscription terms last between 1 to 10 years. So they pay monthly during those periods. And then at the end, we collect back the mattresses, take them apart, and disassemble everything and then recycle everything free of charge. So the recycling part is expected to be loss-making. So we use the profit from the subscription side to subsidize the recycling process and also to invest in recycling tech R&D. So we are hoping that in the future, with enough investment in R&D and with the rising prices of recycled materials or green materials, the recycling part could eventually achieve break-even. So that's the goal. And so right now we are operating in Thailand and Indonesia. So we're servicing both B2B and B2C customers in these countries. So I guess the pros of our business model is we're basically an engine that could help direct resources from the retailers or effectively the real estate sector into sustainability, because at the end someone has to pay for it, and we're using this market-based mechanism to help cover, to kind of get our customers or get the market itself to help cover for the externalities. So actually, I have to be honest with you, like our customers, when it comes to subscribing, I think sustainability and impact probably only play around 20% in that decision. And the rest comes from the financial benefits, because we would help them reduce their fund investment on all these expensive, high-value items. So, I guess that's the carrot that we offer our customers, and the stick is they would have to help support the end-of-life recycling and cover all the externalities. But then they don't really realize that, yeah. So, and the cons, I think, as Belinda asked me earlier, so the cons. Oh, and okay, more pros. Obviously, with our business model, according to our life cycle assessment, we could help lead to a reduction in waste, greenhouse gas emissions, and also like other forms of pollution, especially air. And now to the cons. So I think with the subscription model, our customers don't have to save to get access to mattresses and other high-value products. So that could lead to the issue of instant gratification. But I guess that's kind of the trend of the market trend at the moment. Everyone needs to they want to have things instantly without the need to save. So that's one thing, and it could also help. It could also add to the issue of household debt as well, because once our customers come on board, they are actually obligated to complete the term of the subscriptions. And as I mentioned, this could last between 1 to 10 years. So that's another issue that we are aware of. But then, so at the end, it's not what we provide is not the perfect solution. So as Dr. Priya said, maybe it's one of the solutions that we could use to tackle the triple planetary crisis.
And actually, just on that point, I know it's a very unique circular economy model, and circular economy is becoming one of those interesting terms that you hear everywhere, and everybody's trying to understand how does that work. But you in your intervention, you mentioned something I have not heard many SMEs say, which is a life cycle assessment of the product, right? I have at least 5 products on this desk right now, and I'm not entirely sure if my phone, my purse, and other products have actually undergone a life cycle assessment. So my question is actually quite basic. Why has Non as an MSME decided to do a life cycle assessment? What were some of the enablers of analyzing your product in this way?
Right. So the why first. So as a green business, we need to prove that we're not greenwashing. I think that's probably the most important consideration. And yes, because we have to be able to at least estimate what kind of impact we could have over the coming years. So that's led us to try to find a way to conduct this assessment. And it's actually very costly. So luckily, we managed to get some funding or grant from the Thai government, from PMUC. So that helped us to conduct this assessment. So we worked with a team at the NSTDA, so that's the main science body in Thailand, to conduct the assessment. So I can tell you that the total cost of this assessment is around 1 million baht, so that's $30,000 roughly. And luckily, PMUC gave us 900,000 baht, so that helped cover most of the cost. We just had to put in the human labor, so to speak, to help conduct the assessment. Yeah, so I think so it's really important. I think that's Mosuma mentioned earlier. I think government also has a role to play when it comes to driving forward all these green initiatives. Because we started as a small startup, so without this funding, it would have been impossible for us to conduct this assessment. Oh, and also it took so we did the assessment during COVID. So at the end, instead of taking one year, at the end we ended up spending 2 years conducting the assessment. So and we released the outcome of the assessment in early last year. So I think moving forward, not only we need to do like a regular LCA, this life cycle assessment, but in the future, given the new directive from the EU, from the European Union, the Green Product Directive, will be obligated to actually conduct like a real-time LCA, because we would need to, in effect, know in every single moment what kind of impact we are creating to the environment and to probably other sides of the SDGs as well, including human rights. So I think that's the challenge for SMEs, because in the future, if you want to remain competitive and remain compliant to all the international regulations and directives, we would have to spend ever more resources and investment on all these on all the compliance. Yeah, it's just that's how the world's going to go. But I'm not blaming all these directives, because I think they are helping to uplift the standard, the accessibility standard internationally. So I think it's good for the world, but it's a matter of us having to catch up and to invest both times and resources into complying. And also, I think we would also need to have new technology as well, especially when it comes to like real-time LCA. We can't do it manually, like how we did the first assessment. That took 2 years, right? So it's not possible to have that on a real-time basis. So that's where technology would play a very important role. Yeah.
Thanks, Nabs. Actually, as you're speaking, there were many nods, but also some strong reactions. I will not say, but what I will say is, I do think what I've heard from this conversation is a little bit of everything. I think I've heard a little bit about human rights side of things. I've heard about some of the complexities that come with water and water governance. I've heard about some of the complexities that MSMEs face and some innovative practices, but also some really key challenges. Who bears the cost? I think that's the key challenge that keeps coming up again and again. So whether it's suppliers helping with tech transfer, I heard Dr. Avinda speaking about kind of the slim margins between with wastewater treatment. So that's 35 baht to treat, but the whole process was about 29 baht. So I think you've got 6 baht profit, right? So how do you balance all these margins, the transboundary impacts, the human rights impacts, etc.? Now, I'm cognizant that it's getting to the end of the day, and I really would like to hear more from everybody else. So before I ask maybe for one more round of questions, because I do know that my panelists have prepared a few more rounds of questions, I wanted to hear some burning questions from you all. Only because, first of all, it'll be great to hear your voices. But the second reason, and I think the more important reason, is that you seldom actually have all these different stakeholders together in one room. So maybe we'll just go for one round of questions in case anybody has any burning questions. Mr. Avinda said that there are no stupid questions, but we cannot promise on anything else. But yes, we'll try our best to answer your questions. Any questions coming in from the audience? Okay, there's one lone hand in the back. The second hand. Okay, we will start with.
Hi, all the panelists. Thank you so much for all your insights. And I just have one quick question to ask. Since I've heard Kunaps talking about the life cycle assessment for his business, so I wonder for Arvinda and Nahid, do you have any similar practice for your business, or what do you think about this? Is there a similar one already, or would you be possible to adapt, or how do you foresee about this? Thank you so much.
Yeah, life cycle assessments, yes, we have done for some of our products already. And yes, it is very, very important for industries to go through this kind of assessment.
Sorry, and maybe just a follow-up, sorry, while I have you, Avinda. Do you remember what was the first prompt that made your company take on a life cycle assessment? Do you remember what the push and pull factors were?
Just to, play a role in industry that we are ahead and adopting the technology. So we have to be a role model. So that was that kind of thinking was there with the management.
Great. Maybe Nahid next.
For our company, actually, we do not do any life cycle assessment, but from the customer side and some of NGOs, they are doing the life cycle assessment. Not only that, now reusing the old clothes also trending. Thank you.
Interesting. So similar, actually, model to the one that Naps described. So very interesting. Sorry, Sagita, you might have better eyesight than me, but I do think I saw a hand here.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you for your insights. And so I'm a water person, in the water engineer, in the water treatments as well, and also like production. The dilemma around like production versus like liabilities or risks, for example, human rights risks and water pollution and environmental risks, always like heavyweights to the production side. When I listen this side, like the treatment is very costly, and when we think of the short run, might it be very costly, but long run, liability wise, it might not be costly. So within this context, I would like to ask the panelists about if there conduct some long-term risk assessment and the liability cost. whether it will be impact to your product branding or marketing, and because the water is substantial rights of the humans, so that's why we do not have a right breach that. So we have really responsibility to respect that right. So that's why I think there is wouldn't be any cost related topic when we're talking about water. So that's my question. Yeah.
So thanks for your question. See, the long-term threat for any industry is textile industry is the water availability in future. Okay, so if you think, if you know that the India, even when I came here in Thailand in 2012, Thailand was considered as a water-rich country. Okay, and when you see the map, everywhere it is showing blue, blue, blue. But last 2-3 years, Dr. Pia, you can put more light on that. See, even this Pasak Dam, the water level reached to an alarming level, around 5%, I think 3 years back. And the industries, we are asked by the government of Thailand to reduce their intake from the river and from the source. I mean, if probably the rain would have not come in the next month, most of the companies would have been stopped for because of the water. So it's not only the matter of maintaining the discharge water qualities parameters. It is at the same time is to reduce the uses and withdrawal from the source, the water. So in that perspective, in my company, we have taken so many projects to reuse and recycle. Like our effluent treatment plant, when we discharge to the river after meeting all the standards, we are utilizing in our power plant for dust suppression, in boilers for quenching, means quenching the discharge ash from the boiler, and many other areas where before we used to have the raw water from the river. In fact, it is a treated water that is having also cost. 1.5 baht per cubic meter is our treatment cost. So we stop most of the plant, and every month we are using around 3,000 to 4,000 cubic meter of water recycle. Means treated water we are using, ETP water we are using. So the threat is always there now, and we are working so many other projects like how can we minimize in our industry also, in our group companies, we are having a target. ZLD means we have to reach to that position. Otherwise, we cannot survive. Today, you might be having all the resources, all the technologies, but what about the water availability? If that is not there, all the technology will go, into the dustbin. So no technology can generate water. So we have to think about that also. Means restrict, and the technology should be available for the industries where with the minimum consumption we can achieve the maximum output.
Yeah, I think it's. Thanks. Let me try this. I think it's another way of looking at it, because I'm sure on the production side, as engineers, people try to save the water and then do their best on reduce the contamination into the water. But I think when we talk about loss and damage, that is uncalculated. So what we are doing in every business is try to think about, in my view, think about the people, think about the planet, and also your business. So you need to think about the profit. But how you can, or how the particular in this SME, the small these SME people, they have very few profit on it. So how they can be ensure on, if I invest on something, that in long run I get these three things back into my company. So I think that's something we also have to keep in mind when we look about long-term investment into something and prevent the loss and damage that might cause in the future from this industry. Thanks.
Thank you for all the panelists. I have actually one question for all of us. So, do you think the water that we consume every day is safe and clean? Really? Can I have a raise hand? Do you think the water that you drink every day in your house, in the office, do you think they are safe?
So you want to say whether this water is safe?
Yes, this is the question. Anyone? Do you think it's safe and clean?
I think depend where you are as well. The quality of water could be different.
And Belinda is drinking it now. Okay. Thank you, Suparik. No, the question is, I asked the question because from our study, for example, from my home country, Indonesia, we have a study from Citarum River where once it was dubbed as the most polluted river in the world. So it is so bad where in that river basin also textile operates with pharmaceutical and other industry, but textile is one of the biggest industry there. And it says that the Citarum River supplies 80% of the drinking water to Jakarta, the capital city. So 80% of the water that I drink every day and other people is from the Citarum River. However, the Citarum River, where many industries operate, nearly 1,900 industry out of 3,000 business dump their unregulated waste to the river every day because they don't have ETP, effluent treatment plan. They don't have it. Or if they have it, it's not sufficient enough to treat the waste. And it was, in one study, it says that the water from the Citarum River, it was found that it has lead poisoning 10,000 times more than the safe limits for human consumption. So that's my question. Is the water we are drinking every day safe for us? And because within this river basin, there are so many also SMEs and also big brands. That's why I see this discussion today is very important because, again, as you say, all the panelists as well, without water, we cannot live, right? We cannot generate water. We can treat it, but we cannot generate water, rightly so, as Arvin said. So then the question is, again, how we can, what is the really concrete action that out of this discussion, after this discussion, because before I attended this session, I had a discussion with other speakers from the previous session. He said, for him to work with SMEs within his industries to really join the sustainability effort, it takes him literally 15 years to see the changes. This is all of the things, yeah. Over to you.
Sorry, to quick response on it. I think it makes sense for me along 10 or 15 years because several examples in like Bangladesh or in other countries, say, particularly in the SME, you cannot expect they change drastically in short term, right? So there's several mechanism or procedures has been done like in cascading with supporting from the government. For first 3 years, you come to this limit. And then next 5 years, you move to the next step. So I think in that way, that could help SME to improve their production process and also the products. And that require a lot of support. It's not only from SME themselves, right? They need support from the bank. They need support from finance mechanism. They need support from the government, from international organizations and other sectors. Because think again, I mean, if we're going back into the original point, what we are talking is, I feel this is a product at the end of everything. If we go back to the root cause, we know how many substances, how many materials that we are using that cause the contamination of the water, how much we can avoid it. And if we do that, how much does it impact for your cost and benefit? So I think this is very challenging issue. And in 10, 15 years, that's why I said it really makes sense to me in terms of moving forward into sustainability. Thanks.
It's a journey, right? Over to Belinda.
I've actually loved this conversation, and there's something that Dr. Priya said. I saw everybody nodding their head. It's about that support. And I think I've heard everybody talking about how we need to actually, first of all, for factory suppliers, finding a network. I think that was a key takeaway. We heard Nahid online talking about how some factories don't have access to the technology. So what has actually been helpful is for them to come together, right? I heard from Masumi talking about how some brands are trying to be early movers in this space and really try and put a price tag to human rights, but also clean water issues, and try to actually, support. But they too have had to find coalitions, ecosystems of similarly minded businesses that would support. I've heard the cost of data, tech, etc., but I've also learned quite a lot from each of the speakers. Now, cognizant that water is an issue that kind of cuts across climate, etc., it requires government financing, etc. I'm going to ask everybody on the panel, starting with Mr. Avinda, and then we can end online with Nahid, to just give us one key message that they think should be taken forward when we next have this conversation about water, clean water, and human rights due diligence.
Well, thanks for asking this question. So I will not reply this question in a technical way. I will reply it in emotional way and on a humanitarian ground. So that is what no business. See, everything is why exists why, because the humans are there on the earth. So as I told earlier also, see, the technologies will come in the market, and SMEs, as Dr. Pia told, that any changes can be adopted into a phase manner only, because will have some time, and it's but obvious and it's standard. It means there is no step rise and step adoption kind of things, because every industries move forward in phase manners also. Their plan reduction of carbon emissions, reduction of waste generation, reduction of fresh water consumption. So many challenges. So it all in phase manners only possible. So my one-line message to today's conference is that be honest to what you do. That's all.
So from me, I think a one-liner. So I think if there's a will, then there's a way. Because when we first started as a small startup, we also didn't have like a lot of resources, and we didn't really know a lot of things actually that we know today. So but then we have to start somewhere. I think with the right intention, you'll get there. You'll make your business competitive and sustainable at the same time. It's possible. It's a matter of will.
Yeah, when I look at the future, and when we think of is it possible, I'm also thinking of this. I was reading somewhere, and it still stays with me. Is what is the story of my product and my service? As a business, what is the story? Like, what has gone into developing that product or service? And second, am I proud of that product or service? If I'm able to tell that story to the world, I think we've made progress.
Yeah, for me, I think it's be brave. Be brave for the change. Be brave for making connection. Be brave to ask for what you don't know. be brave to get more network. And that's the way to help this world and then this society for in integrated manner that for the problem that we are facing. Thanks.
And then over to Nahid online, just a one-liner, just a key takeaway that we can take from this.
We can stop doing the business, so we have to invest more on technology. I mean, for easy, we can more so that the resource can be available for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. And with that, we think we have a bit of a coalition of the willing. So, and my fellow panelists don't know this, but let's touch base after this to see how we report back on some of these next year. We have, I think, almost all the key stakeholders needed to address human rights and clean water. So,